Hey, how's it going, everybody? So, once again, my good friend Kyle Martin has decided to make another video, yet again titled Cisco Certifications Are Not Worth It. And I think this is great. And the reason I think that is because I'm going through some of the comments here, and you know what? The turnout to these comments are way better than the turnout of some of the other videos that he's done titled the exact same thing. So Kyle has had a lot of YouTube channels throughout what seems like a decade now, but it's really more like 5 years or so. He's had quite a few YouTube channels, and he's always posted a video titled this something about, Cisco certifications are not worth it, CCNA certifications are not worth it, IT certifications are not worth it. And there's always controversy behind the video. And the reason being is because people read or people listen to the first 5 minutes or less, maybe 2, 3 minutes of the video, stop, and they start leaving comments. So if you read this video, I'm gonna really try to remember to put it in the link below, in the description below, so y'all can see it and annotate it above there or wherever it is. Um, that way you all can watch it. I think it's a great video. Wish I could make more videos like that more often. But in any case, if y'all can't tell already, the reason I like the video is not because the title of it is true. It's because he's using the title, right, to spark some interest in people, to click and to actually listen to what he has to say. And what he has to say is not Cisco certifications are not worth it. Most of the time. A lot of times, Cisco certifications can be worthless if you don't take your study seriously, which is what he's trying to say. And then later on, towards the second half of the video, he talks about putting in hard work, knowing what you're doing, because ultimately, your certification is there to get you through a screening, in a way, a lot of times. But once you sit there and you talk to somebody at an interview and they ask you a question, are you going to know what to answer? And what he's trying to say is that the people that tend to complain about Cisco certifications not being worth it tend to be people that really didn't even put in the work. So they'll say things like, oh, I put in countless hours of work for the past 6 months, 8 months. Sure, it might have taken you 8 months since you bought the book, since you got your CBT Nugget subscription, but countless hours meaning you can't count them because they're so sporadic, meaning you only studied maybe here and there, maybe an hour today, an hour last week, a couple hours yesterday, skipped a week. That's the kind of stuff that I see people doing a lot. And you cannot approach these certifications with that kind of mentality. These certifications require you to be on top of this cert all the time. You have to be studying, you need to be reading, you need to be learning. It's really not possible in most scenarios to be able to get through the certifications and actually get value from them just by studying here and there. So so the point being that I think this video is great. Go check it out. And if you are planning on getting on track to get certified, you may or may not already be a network engineer. It doesn't matter. These certifications, starting from CCENT, CCNA, all the way up, are designed to go in a progression. And if you follow that progression and if you truly study, if you get through that progression, you're going to be a great engineer coming out of that. As long as you retain the information, which only comes through practice, right? People say you become extremely good. You become an expert at something if you have spent 10,000 hours doing this one thing. People look up a video on MPLS and say that they're an MPLS expert. People work in an environment where they have an MPLS CE, where their router is a CE. And because it says MPLS on the interface, all of a sudden they're an MPLS expert. When then they go to an interview and they get asked, well, how does MPLS work? What's the difference between a PE and a P router? And what are the VRFs used for? And the route distinguishers and the route targets? What's the difference between them? And they're just like, oh, I don't know. Because they don't know the purpose behind MPLS. And that BGP runs on top of MPLS. And it doesn't have to run on the P routers. So all those details were things that you only get and you only remember through repetition. Depending on your job, whether your job requires you to be deploying, whether it requires you to be selling, whether it requires you to be presenting on these things. I mean, slowly things will start dwindling. You will forget, especially if you don't do deployments and you're not in the lab all the time, or you're not working with customers on the equipment as much anymore. But you should be able to retain a lot of information, especially if you keep learning. And in this field, you absolutely have to keep learning. He also goes into the topic of that all of the growth doesn't come from work. It comes from what you do after work. And I couldn't agree more with that. When I used to work at a school district, none of my work, or I'm not going to say none of my work, but not 100% of my work was absolutely route switch, right? Not all of it was networking. There was project planning there to do. There was a lot of troubleshooting tickets that I had to resolve. A lot of them not being really, route switch technology. Like there wasn't a ticket coming in from a school that, asked me to install an OSPF area or a stub area or whatever. There just wasn't that. There were projects where we had to implement stuff. We had to upgrade equipment. We had to put in new equipment, do rips and replaces, but they were few and far between in comparison to maintaining things. A lot of my experience comes from working at home and working on my equipment and working on my training. He brought up a good point. If you work a 40-hour work week, and let's just say you spend 10% actually doing, route switch training and configuration, not copy pasting templates. I mean, configuration. Let's just say you spend 4 hours a week, and you work 48 weeks. You get X amount of hours, right? What is that? Like 130-ish hours, give or take, a year. If you go home and work and study at the rate that I was studying, or at the rate that Kyle studies, or at the rate that any person that's passionate about networking studies, you can easily, if you're doing your CCA, you can easily do 25, 30, 40 hours a week. On average, I would say I probably did about 25 hours a week. Some weeks I did 30, but on average, it was about 25. If you take that into account, in about 2 months, you are over what somebody learned in a whole year. So keep that in mind. And again, it doesn't mean that you can put on your resume all of a sudden that you have, 20 years experience. You can't do that. But Obviously, when you're in the interview, when you're talking to people, you can express about how often you study, how much you spend on the lab after hours, because that is what tells people how passionate you are about your work. People want to hear that. People want to feel like you care. People want to feel like you really enjoy what you do and you really have a thirst for learning. You'd be surprised at the number of people who simply don't, and are there for whatever other, whether it be monetary or other kind of reasons. I am there to expand and grow my mind, and I love what I do. I always have. I've had a few jobs in the networking field. I'm really, really, really enjoying my position right now at Cisco. I think it's a great job for me. I think it suits me extremely well. But I always am looking for ways to learn new things. And a lot of it is, how do I actually do something? How do I configure something? And then when I get into the IE studies, of course it's configuration, but in the written portion, you learn about how things actually work, from a bits and bytes sort of perspective. And that's important to know. It is important to know. Pick up really good books, guys. If you guys want to really learn, you need to learn from the people that have been there, from the people that created this stuff, right? So pick up, Routing TCP/IP Volumes 1 and 2. Pick up the CCIE, the certification guide. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. Pick up, the MPLS Fundamentals book, QoS. I actually haven't gone through the QoS one, so I'm not sure how great it is. But MPLS Fundamentals, books with BGP and OSPF, you need to know that if you're going to be in route switch. And if you're going to be a route switch engineer, you might as well know the ins and outs of it, right? You're going to need it. Now things are kind of, things are growing like everything else. Technology is growing at a rapid pace. There are a lot of things that are changing the market. Right now, that's SDN. There's application-centric infrastructure. There's hyper-convergence. And, there's just so much to learn all the time. VXLAN as well, kind of plays hand in hand a little bit with ACI. But point being is that you're never going to know everything. And, it's kind of a tragedy in a way, but it's kind of great, and knowing that you're never going to know everything there is to know about networking, I think is what makes it awesome. People think it's magic, but it's nothing but bits and bytes and really, really smart people making sense of all of that. And with that, I would like to end this video once again by saying thank you to my friend Kyle Martin for posting that video. Once again, it's in the description below. And have a great day, guys. Have a good one. Bye.